Samantha Chapter 8. On Saturday morning, Samantha was getting dressed when there was a sharp knock at her door. Elsa leaned her head in. "You have company, miss," she said. Elsa looked annoyed at having to bother with Samantha's company. "Your grandmother said to tell you it's a friend. She's in the parlor." Samantha was surprised. She had lots of friends who came to play, but Grandmary would never tell any of them to wait in the parlor. The parlor was only for grown-up visitors. Samantha hurried downstairs. She stopped in the hall to straighten her dress, then slowly opened the parlor door and looked around. At first she thought the room was empty. Then she saw a wide blue bow just peeking over the back of the green velvet chair. That was enough. "Nellie!" she yelled. She ran around the chair and hugged the girl who jumped up to meet her. Nellie was laughing. "Oh, Nellie, it's really you! You're all right!" Samantha stood back and looked at her friend. "Are you back at the Rylands?" she asked. "Oh, no, it's much better," Nellie said. Her eyes were sparkling. "It was your grandmother, Samantha. She talked to Mrs. Van Sickland, and Mrs. Van Sickland hired my mother and father. Dad will be her driver. He'll take care of the horses and the garden. Ma'am will cook and clean and do laundry, and Bridget and Jenny and I will help." Nellie bounced with excitement. She looked as if she had a grand surprise. "And guess what, Samantha? We get to live there, all of us. We really do, in the rooms over the carriage house. Isn't that wonderful?" Samantha grabbed Nellie's hands and danced with her around the parlor. "Oh, Nellie, you'll live only 2 houses away. We can play every single day when I get home from school." Nellie stopped. Only her eyes danced now. She leaned over as if to tell a secret. "Samantha," she said in an excited half-whisper, "I'm going to go to school too. Mrs. Van Sickland told your grandmother I could." Nellie jumped a little and clapped her hands. "What do you think of that?" Samantha hugged her. "Oh, Nellie, that is wonderful. It's just wonderful. I'm so glad you're back." Samantha swung Nellie around in a circle and then started toward the door. "Come on," she called. "Maybe Mrs. Hawkins will give us some gingerbread." Monday morning, Samantha led a strange parade down the hill, across Main Street, and into the Mount Bedford Public School. She walked tall and proud, dressed in her best gray dress. Nellie walked next to her, skipping little excited skips now and then. Jenny and Bridget, Nellie's little sisters, followed behind. They squeezed each other's hands and walked very quietly. Bridget was 7 and Jenny was 6. They would both start in the 1st grade. They looked shy and scared as they tiptoed into their classroom. Then Samantha led Nellie to the 2nd grade classroom. Nellie would start there because she knew her letters and she could read a little, even though she had never been to school before. In the dim hallway facing the tall oak door, Nellie looked frightened. She twisted her hand in her dress and looked at Samantha for help. "Everything will be fine, you'll see," Samantha said. "Remember, I'll meet you on the front steps when school's over." Nellie took a deep breath and stepped into her classroom. Samantha hurried out of the building and ran the 2 blocks to Mrs. Crampton's. All day long Samantha worried about Nellie. During the morning exercises, she wished she had taught Nellie the oath of allegiance. She knew they would be saying it in the public school. Did Nellie know it? Did she know the hymns they would sing? At lunchtime, as Samantha ate her watercress sandwich, she remembered the lard pails Nellie and her sisters had carried as lunch boxes. She wished she had looked inside. She wasn't sure they had enough to eat. At least she could have given them her cookies. During penmanship, Samantha practiced S's and Q's and thought she should have stayed longer with Nellie. Would someone help her find a pencil sharpener? Would there be someone to show her where the bathroom was? By 3 o'clock, Samantha was almost bursting to know how Nellie had gotten along. She ran the 2 blocks to the public school and climbed the front steps 2 at a time. Jenny and Bridget began jumping up and down the minute they saw her. Both of them talked at once. "There are 30 desks in our room, Samantha. I can count to 30, Bridget said. "I have my own desk," Jenny added. "We put our lunches in the cloakroom," Bridget continued. "No, Bridget, it's not a clock. It's a clockroom. It's not a clockroom, it's a cloakroom," said Samantha. Do that again. "We put our lunches in the cloakroom," Bridget continued. "No, Bridget, it's a cloakroom, it's a clockroom, not a cloakroom. We have books, see?" Jenny held up 3 books strapped together with a leather belt. "That's nice, Jenny," said Samantha. "But where's Nellie? Why isn't she here?" The little girls looked at each other and shrugged. "We don't know. We haven't seen her." Samantha looked around. All the other boys and girls were on their way home. Samantha saw Eddie Ryland pulling Carrie Wilson's hair ribbons off and running down the street with it. But there was no sign of Nellie. Where could she be? Then Samantha saw her. Nellie was huddled by the bushes near the foot of the steps. She was sitting on her heels with her heads in her hands, and she was crying. The three girls ran down the steps and crouched next to Nellie. Jenny and Bridget began patting their sister's back and stroking her hair. Samantha put her arm around Nellie. "What is it? What's the matter?" she asked. "I can't do it, Samantha," Nellie sobbed. "I'm too old to start school. I can't do it." "But Nellie, what happened?" "The children all laughed at me because I'm big and I'm just in second grade," said Nellie as she lifted her tear-stained face. "The teacher made me sit at the back of the room, and she got mad at me when I couldn't get the right answer. She asked me where the Atlantic Ocean was, and I was just so scared that I forgot." Then the children laughed even more. Nellie shuddered with a little sob. "They called me Ragbag. And one time when a boy passed my desk, he leaned over and whispered, 'Dummy.'" Nellie hid her face in her lap again. "Oh, Samantha, I can't go back tomorrow," she sobbed. "Yes, you can, Nellie," Samantha said firmly. She was very angry, and when Samantha was angry, she was not likely to sit still. "Nellie, do you know the way home by yourself?" Samantha asked. Nellie nodded. "Well, then, you take Jenny and Bridget home. I have to do something. Dry your eyes. It's going to be all right. I promise you it's going to be all right." Nellie rubbed her hands over her eyes and sniffed loudly. But she got up, took her sister's hands, and started home. Samantha marched back to Mrs. Crampton's academy.